Guys, let's talk about objections. Let's talk about the truth about objections. I discovered this back when I was doing door to door sales. I saw that it also was true with selling software. I saw that it was true with selling websites and SEO. I've seen and I still see that it's true with selling flat fee lead generation, coaching, and I have a funny feeling it's true with everything. Here's the truth. And some of you are going to hear this and you're going to get defensive and you're going to say, "No, that's not the case. That's not the case." But I want you to hear me with an open mind and give it some real thought because I'm telling you this is the truth. The objection that you keep getting over and over and over, whether it's about contract, whether it's about price, whether it's about I got to talk to my spouse or my business partner, whether it's I got to think about it, I got to do more research, whatever the objection is that you keep getting. Because I know, as I said, that there's something that keeps coming to mind. Okay. Whatever that objection is the objection that you yourself have a problem with. And okay, I'm going to say, like, some of you guys are like, no, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem. I'm not cheap and I keep getting price. Okay. It's something inside of you that has an issue with it. Okay, let me explain. I used to sell door to door with groups of young men between 20 and 30 years old. And I remember there was one guy specifically, and this specific person, they kept getting the contract. They kept getting the contract issue. Like, guys, every meeting it was like, I just keep running into people don't want to sign contracts and they don't want to. He kept saying this thing, contract. And the rest of us, well, not the rest of us, but a lot of us were like for me, like I never get a problem with contract ever, right? And what we figured out as we started digging into it is that fundamentally, this specific individual, he had an issue with contracts. Like he had this belief about contracts that he's like he was selling a product, but he thought the contract was stupid. Like if it were up to him, he didn't want the contract, which we're like, dude, look, man, in order for you to get paid a commission, the customer has to stay on for a certain amount of time so that the company makes a certain amount of money so that your commission is baked in, right? But he had this issue with contracts, or so that he had this belief about them, right? And we had to help him overcome that. We're like, look, man, contracts are contracts. Like people that say they don't do contracts, they're lying to you. If somebody says to you, "Hey, I don't do contracts," well, tell them to grab their phone. Say, "Yeah, you do. What about this? Are you one of those people that paid $800, $1,000 to pay for this outright?" Well, no. Well, okay. Well, what about your house? Are you paying cash for that? Well, no. How about your car? Right? Contracts are part of life, but we believe people when they say we don't do contracts, right? And so we just have to call them out. Now, are there certain situations where you're dealing with the guy? I've had people that literally say they don't do contracts. I'm like, cool. There's an option to pay in full. It's $1,700 or whatever with that product I used to sell. But most of the time, that's just something they're throwing out there, right? And so I never lost deals because of contract, because I'm like, dude, it's a contract. Like, of course that's a contract, right? Here's the offer. You pay no money down. I'm speaking to when I sold security systems. You pay no money down. You get all this equipment, and then you have to stay with the company a period of time, or it doesn't make any sense. Duh, right? And the way that I said it and the belief that I had, there was no big deal. Let me share with you really quick one more example. I personally used to have. I would always get the I don't. I would always get I need to talk to my spouse. Okay. I need to talk to my spouse. And at the time, it wasn't I need to talk to my partner, business partner, because I wasn't selling B2B. I was selling B2C. I was going to homes. And I would always get this. And it was such a big thing in my head that if I knocked on a door and both spouses weren't there, I wouldn't even go inside. I wouldn't even pitch them. I remember one time I told this lady and she was super interested. And I was like, I could tell her husband wasn't there, but I didn't want to be weird. And I was like, well, let me come back when your husband's around. She's like, well, why don't we just do it right now? And I was like, okay. And I went in, I was still hesitant. And I was like, okay, it's this much per month. And she's like, okay. And she signed it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But here's how I actually overcame it, because I started digging into this myself when I saw this in this other guy. And I realized that the reason that I kept getting that objection is because for me back then, I, for some reason, thought that, yeah, that's normal. Like, you have to talk to your spouse. Like, if you don't, you're going to have this big fight and all this different stuff. And so I had this belief that you had to talk to your spouse because I thought I did. And it all changed when I ironically bought my first program on how to build rank and rent sites and generate leads. And I took this phone call, or I got on this call just to get information, right? I didn't even know I was going to be buying. And we went through it. And at the end of it, I pulled my card that annoys the crap out of me now because I used to do the same thing. And I said, yeah, it sounds great. Obviously I got to check with the wife, blah, 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 blah. And this person said something that should really stopped me in my tracks. I'd never heard it. They're like, yeah, call her. That's great. Call her right now. I'm like, okay. So I call, and anyway, long story short, I called. It was a terrible pitch. It was basically like, hey, it's $6K. And she's like, well, don't you think that's a stupid decision? I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. I got back on the phone with him and I said, yeah. She said no. And anyway, incredible sales pitch, incredible salesman. I ended up buying this program, even though my wife said no. And basically what it came down to is he pointed out, he's like, hold up. So is it her should she be on the call, or is it you? Like who's making the money here? And I don't know what it was, but something snapped inside me that day. And I sat there in silence for about a minute after he said a few things that really stung. And I said, I got the card. Tell me when you're ready. I'll give you the card. And I give him the card and I paid. And it was the most liberating thing ever. And I drove home because I was in a parking lot, at a mall. And I drove home and I walked straight up to her and I said, I bought the program. She's like, I know, I already saw the bank account. And she was mad for about an hour. And I've made so much money from that program, from the knowledge I gained and where that put me. I can't imagine if I hadn't. But what happened that day, it was weird. It felt liberating. It almost felt, it was comparable to getting a sale of that dopamine rush. I was like, because I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to make this work. It's on me. I'm confident I will make this work. I will make sure that this doesn't come back and bite me. And I walked in and I told her that, and we were fine. And we're still married and whatever. She was mad for about an hour. Ever since that day, do you want to know what objection I don't get and what I don't tolerate? I got to talk to my wife, because now I understand how that works. And I understand that, you know what? No, you don't. You really, really don't. And if you say you do, then maybe I got the wrong person on the phone, and shame on me. So the point is this: whatever the objection is that you keep getting, and if you're selling digital products, you're watching this, you're selling flat fee lead generation, you're selling whatever, right? Whatever that is, if you keep getting, hey, I don't want to do a contract, you have an issue with the contract. You need to figure that out. Hey, you keep getting, it's too expensive. It's too expensive. It's probably because when you drop price, you're saying it in such a way that's putting some weird thoughts in their head, because you have a problem with the price. You're saying a price, but you don't really believe that's what it's worth, right? And so as you start peeling back, you start realizing it's actually an internal objection that you have that you're projecting onto your client or your prospect. So that's it. I know some of you, that's going to take, it's some food for thought. And if you don't believe me, think about it. There's an objection. As I said that, you're like, yeah, that's mine. Contract, price, got to think about it. Get back to you. Got to do research, whatever it is, right? Don't trust you. Whatever that objection is that you keep getting over and over, that's the one that you have an issue with. Okay. And until you overcome that yourself and you're willing to start making buying decisions, irregardless of that thing, you will never be able to consistently close deals, because you're always going to have that thing stand in your way. And so it's something that you have to change inside yourself first, and then it's no longer an issue. I never get that. Got to talk to my partner. I'm like, look, man, if that's the case, I'm talking to the wrong person. Like, I'll just say it right there. I'm like, or I got to talk to the spouse. Like, no, you don't. If you needed to talk to the spouse, you should have brought him on here. You know that we've been talking long enough. I know you can make this decision. Period. End of story. And I can ask that of people because I make those decisions on my own. Okay. Anyway, guys, as usual, we got tons and tons of great free content in the Facebook group. Check out the link in the description, and I will see you inside.